So hello, everybody. Welcome back to our team's second alumni panel. Today, we're going to be talking about choosing a pathway or career. Just a quick reminder, if you could keep your mics muted and cameras off, because this will be recorded and uploaded to our website and or our social media. If you could also refrain from typing in the chat to not disturb our panelists. My name is Aslan. I'm a grade 9 student. This is my second year on the team. I enjoy skateboarding, biking, and cooking. And today I will be your moderator, so you might hear me talking a little bit. So you might be asking, who are we? Well, we are First Robotics Team 1325 Inverse Paradox. We are a community-based team located in Mississauga. We are also a registered charity with the CRA and have over 15 years of experience. Our memberships are open now, but keep your eyes open towards the end when we talk about that a little bit more. So let's move on to meet our panelists. First up, we have Stefan. Stefan, could you briefly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name's Stefan. I'm a mentor with 1325. When I graduated high school, I got my Red Seal in general carpentry, then went back to school to the University of Windsor to get a mechanical engineering degree, again, from the University of Windsor. I currently work as a building systems coordinator for PCL Construction. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Eric. Eric, could you also say a little bit about yourself?
Hey, good evening. I'm Eric Bryce. I was the captain of 1325 in the 2012-2013 year. Since then, I studied engineering science at U of T, graduated in 2019, and now I'm an associate on the electronic desk at National Bank Financial.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Next, we have Richard. Richard, could you also say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Richard. I recently graduated from the University of Waterloo with a degree in mechatronics engineering. I was on 1325 when I was in high school. I was the design lead for a couple of years. Currently, I'm a product design engineer at Apple in Cupertino, California.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Last but not least, we have Derek. Derek, could you also once again say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Derek. I'm a fourth-year computer engineering student at McMaster University, and I'm currently on co-op at Tesla working on drive systems. I was on 1325 for 3 years from 2014 to 16, and I primarily worked on data acquisition and strategy.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Just another reminder, at any point during the session, if you do have any questions, please go to the link in the chat or also type the link at the top of the slideshow in your browser. Another reminder, if you could also write the name of the panelist you want to ask the question to, that would be great. So with that being said, we can now move on to asking our panelists a couple of questions we received beforehand. Starting with Stefan. Stefan, how and when did you know what you wanted to study?
I really like this question in the sense, basically up until I would say the middle of my engineering degree, I really didn't know what I wanted to do or what my direction could or should be. As you can kind of see by the different things I studied in my apprenticeship and my engineering degree, I picked sectors that were very broad and inspecific. As a carpenter, I did everything from finished work to scaffolding, and then general site work. But again, always a carpenter, always on the tools, but never quite one particular job. I like that variety. When I went into engineering, it was actually a big split for me between civil and mechanical, having my background with FRC and other interests, but also my background as a carpenter. I chose mechanical engineering because I knew I could have the opportunity to work in construction if I wanted to as a mechanical engineer, whereas a civil engineer, it's very hard to get out of that kind of construction-based type of work. That it's not impossible, but mechanical, there's inherently more variety. So that's why I chose mechanical. Through my co-op experiences, I knew that, and even before in high school and some other previous work terms and stuff, I knew I didn't particularly want a traditional desk job. And so my path towards where I am now was navigating the pros and cons of different environments. And I love the job I have now, being a building systems coordinator, working with consulting engineers, municipalities, and all the different types of different inspectors and the trades on site and everyone on the project team. But I get to work on kind of heating, cooling, electrical, anything that gets turned on and commissioned in a building and then gets inspected and certified by a city. So again, it's a very open, broad job. But for me, it was having that variety within my job, and whatever my future career would be, but while also not being, tied to a traditional desk job.
Yeah, that's really great that you do enjoy your job, which is really important when choosing a major. You want to be happy, right? Stefan, how would you say it first impacted your decision?
Actually, first, when you come through high school, you get, in some cases, objective, but more often than not, subjective opinions and information about certain industries and sectors. Some good, some bad. But something first really did for me was keep me beside engineers through my whole process, where I could ask questions at different points in my life and have those conversations that really gave me information that was on both sides of a fence, and where I could make an objective decision on something that was subjective information. Being in first and being, more important, the people in first, not only on 1325, but on the other teams that you work with, and that network you build as a student, and more importantly as a mentor, is very important and very much helped me through that decision. So yeah, first, it's just a great resource, not only for the community and people coming up that are in FRC and FLL and all the other first robotics programs, but more importantly, the mentors and the network you build with and around the team.
Thank you, Stefan. That was great. Moving on to Derek. Derek, if you had to select a program from the start, would you make the same choice? Why or why not?
Thank you. Yeah, I would actually stick to computer engineering as my program of choice for a couple of reasons. So first, it'll be a personal reason. It's because I've always had my mindset on learning the intricacies of hardware and software and how they interface together in things like robots and modern devices. I've always been intrigued by how software optimizations could squeeze more power out of dating hardware. Like, for example, if Apple pushes a new software update, sometimes it can revive older devices and make them usable again. Or how NVIDIA designs certain GPUs to work with CAD softwares like SolidWorks. But mainly, I feel like programs like computer engineering and what my second choice would have been, mechatronics, they teach a broader range of skills, which is very beneficial for your first few jobs. For example, in computer engineering, we learn topics that are covered in hardware engineering, software, electrical, and math programs, but we learn it all in one. And this allows computer engineering students to apply to a larger or a broader range of opportunities, such as some of my colleagues or peers work in software engineering at Amazon or hardware engineering at Intel, or they can go down the automation controls route like I have. And when I say this, I'm not saying that you have to go down a broad route. I know people who go down more specific career pathways and program pathways, and they do just great. But if you choose a niche program, you might end up pigeonholing yourself. And that's why I think it's better to choose a engineering degree or any degree that allows you to have more opportunities in the future.
Okay, thank you, Derek. I took from your answer that you enjoy your career. What would you say that you enjoyed the most, or your favorite part of your career?
I'd have to say my favorite part of my career is definitely working with a like-minded engineering team, working with engineers who all excel in their fields and work towards a common goal. So whether that be a short-term goal to push a new update to production, or a long-term goal to ramp up a platform such as Model Y or Plaid Model S, my team shares that sense of camaraderie within each other, and that's what drives me to come to work and work hard every single day. Apart from that, my line of work, automation controls, also means that I don't need to sit at a desk all day long. There's nothing wrong with that. But I prefer, getting my hands a little dirty sometimes. So some days I spend the whole day writing a Python script for data manipulation and output. But other days I spend on the production floor, recovering robots or pushing new changes that'll help us increase our yield. Some days I design human machine interfaces or set up testing rigs. You get the point. I really like the fact that I can work with different types of people on different problems while also working towards a common goal.
Yeah, so that's really great that you do enjoy your career, which, just to emphasize again, is really important when choosing a major, right? So now moving on to Richard. Richard, what advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career similar to yours?
It's a good question. I think the best piece of advice I could give would be to join some sort of student design team, something similar to FIRST actually, because it's really the only chance in university or in high school you get to like do real engineering where you're building an actual project and actual requirements and there's an actual validation like plan. Like you have to go to competition and ideally you want to win. And that kind of thing isn't really present in school. The timelines are much shorter in school. You kind of just like push something and then leave it. But I think working on like a student design team or on something like a FIRST team gives you the kind of experience of working with lots of other cross-disciplinary people and generally teaches you how to work well in a large scale project with lots of moving parts and how to be a good team player. That's the advice I would give, would be to join FIRST Robotics team if you're still in high school or if you're in university, like a Formula SAE team or something.
So did FIRST have a big impact on you, would you say?
Yeah, I think I'd say that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this panel. I think, I think FIRST is like the stuff that I got to do during FIRST and like kind of the fun and enjoyment of working on something crazy with lots of people who are kind of all like-minded and working towards the same thing is a really cool experience. And I'm fortunate that I get to work at a job that has kind of that energy all the time.
That's great. Thank you, Richard. Now moving to Eric. Eric, how important do you see STEM careers being in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I can say even anecdotally, I work in an investment bank in the trading division of an investment bank. And of my current cohort coming into the organization, just about everybody has either a mathematics, engineering, pure and applied science, a lot of physicists. And I think that's probably broadly indicative of what's happening across the financial services industry and across a lot of industries. Studying science, technology, engineering, mathematics gives you, I think, a really strong toolkit to be able to look at a problem that you haven't quite seen before, take it apart into its constituent pieces, solve the system, and put it back together. And so even if you're not working in a STEM career, I think the skills that you learn in a STEM education are extremely valuable elsewhere. And that's not even to mention the drive towards quantification in every business. And how developing quantitative skills in a STEM education really make you stand out in any industry. So absolutely, I see a lot of growth.
Yeah, to add on to what Eric said, STEM education really does help you, right? It teaches you teamwork, teaches you discipline, it teaches you different things that can help you in your future, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Going back to Stefan, what are the most challenging parts of your career?
And I would say communication skills, which is something I've learned a lot within FIRST as a team member, and as the other panelists have mentioned, with working towards common goals and everything that entails. The communication needed to do that effectively and objectively is huge, and that's something I really learned through my time within FIRST, and how to remove emotion and stay to the facts and stay within your realistic means and resources with what you have at hand. That can really help make things better. And then when you get to your goal, when you get to the finish line, understanding what worked and what didn't, and more importantly, why. So coming back to my career, when you're working with different, project, shareholders or, people that are part of your team, you work differently with the site foreman for the plumbing company and the electrical company versus how you work with the mechanical consultant and electrical consultant, and how you work differently with the different building inspectors. So understanding everyone's goals and mission in a project, especially in my role as a coordinator, kind of bouncing between all these different people, those communication skills that I learned through, first, definitely reflect back in my career, and just those communication skills, when to push, when to pull, and how to work with certain people. That was, that's probably, I would say, the most tricky part, if not, the art within what is a technical role.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. Now moving back to Richard. Richard, what does a typical day at work look like for you?
A typical day varies a lot depending on what's going on with the product. So in the earlier stages of product development, a lot of it is doing studies, working with other cross-functional teams to figure out what we're going to book in for the product and what we're not going to book in for the product. As we kind of get later towards the first engineering builds, it's a lot of CAD, a lot of making part releases, a lot of working with other people to make sure everything's going to go smoothly with the build. During builds, a lot of it is troubleshooting, failure analysis, figuring out what the problem is, and pushing changes, trying to make the best change to get the best possible product. And then at the end of the product cycle, which usually is the least stressful, mostly it's just finalizing things, making sure all the ends are buttoned up, and then handing it off to operations to scale the product.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. What would you say is your favorite part? Because you do work at Apple, which is really cool, right? So what would you say your favorite part of your job is?
I think the coolest part is definitely seeing the stuff that you could work on, like go out and be used by people. I have a lot of friends who purchased products that I worked on, and it's like just a cool thing to see like ads for it. And you're just like, hey, I was a part of that, a relatively small part to be sure, but I was a part of that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Richard. Eric, which one of your personal traits and skills gained in STEM helped you the most during your career?
I would say the most valuable trait to me in my current role is an ability to deal with ambiguity. A lot of what I do is basic economic research and trying to turn into products things that only exist in academic papers. And so almost by definition, you're solving problems that haven't been solved before.
Yeah.
And in most of your education, in high school, certainly in university up until maybe fourth year when you start doing thesis and capstone, almost everything you do is solving problems that have already been solved before. And there's almost always a solution guide if you Google hard enough. And so to be able to deal with that ability to deal with ambiguity, you really have to look outside of your core academic curriculum. And FIRST is an amazing way to do that, right? You've got kickoff in January, a big, confusing engineering problem, a game that's been laid out. There are all sorts of different ways you could go about solving it, but there's no definite solution manual. And it's up to you then, as a young engineer, to make design decisions that break through that ambiguity. You won't always make the right decision, but you make a decision and you learn how to deal with that and to ultimately create something that works when there is no clear solution. And so FIRST, and like Richard was saying earlier, design teams in university are, I would say, the most valuable way that you can develop that ability to deal with ambiguity, think critically, and solve problems that no one else has solved before. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Derek, would you like to add anything on to what Eric said?
Yeah. So Eric did cover that pretty well, but I would like to add that I want to re-emphasize the social skills that are gained on a team like 1325 or any FRC team for that matter. Yep. So during my time on the team, I did a lot of strategy. So that involved interfacing with different members, mentors, on different teams during every competition, whether that be for match strategy or for alliance selection. So you have to learn how to not only respect others on your team, but also others on every single team. Because if you say something wrong or act disrespectful towards someone, you might be ruining your relationship with them, not only yours but also the team's relationship, and B, hurting your chances at making finals or whatever. If they they could hold a grudge against you and be like, okay, we're not going to pick this team because their strategy lead is kind of being a douche. So
Yeah.
it's it's those relations you build, and the fact that you learn how to act when you interface with different types of people that I think first really provides.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. So thank you guys for answering these questions. We're going to move on to your live questions. Just as a reminder, again, if you want to ask a question, the link is in the chat. Just click that and you can ask the question anonymously. Let me just pull up these questions. Okay, so we have a question for Eric. Eric, what is your advice for students who are in grade 9 or 10 now on how they should plan for their career and subjects to choose for grade 11 or 12?
Ooh. So it's been so long since I was in high school that this is only a faint memory to me. But if I were to say, in general, you're pretty early on. And so the best thing that you can do is, I think at this point, to maximize optionality. I think this was also very much what Derek was saying, that you want to keep your options open for now until you're absolutely sure what it is you want to do. And so many courses that you can select that leave doors open, if that means taking, eventually both advanced functions and calculus in grade 12, if you aren't totally sure if you want to study engineering in university, those things that you can do to maintain optionality, I think are really valuable.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Our next question is for Stefan. Stefan, what difference do you see in the job market for students graduating with college certificates versus a university degree? I think you're on mute, Stefan.
This is a very tough question because, first of all, things are always changing. Just in the time that I graduated high school in 2008, things have changed. I graduated high school, and before I say this, I can really only speak to my experience and what I've seen. I know everyone's reality is a little different, and everyone's experience is a little different, so that needs to be understood. That's kind of what I was talking about, trying to be objective in a subjective environment. So, in 2008, when I graduated, that was the very beginning of the 2008 housing crisis in the U.S. and what eventually became the recession that followed it. So I came out of my bubble of schooling at a very interesting time, in the sense where I had to work very hard. Now, I was coming into an apprenticeship. I don't know if that would have been very different if I had a university degree. So economics certainty definitely has an influence on job market, and especially getting that first job, which my advice is, if you're in university or college and have the opportunity to do co-op, take it, because that gives you, when you graduate, that gives you an opportunity to speak to certain experiences and skills and knowledge learned in that time when you enter the job market, and that's a huge advantage over other graduates. Extracurriculars, that's another big thing. College or university, it doesn't matter. But what's the big difference? It really depends on what you find satisfaction and fulfillment in, be it hand skills and certain applied knowledge, and it's just as big as academic knowledge. It's just learned differently and taught differently. So it's, again, you need to understand the certain environments and where they operate and what works for you. To say one is better or less than the other, I think, is ignorant. But you can be just as successful in either environment, but it's what you do with that time in those institutions, extracurriculars and things that go above and beyond your basic core curriculum that will make a difference when you graduate.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Okay, so next up we have Richard. Richard, what is it like working at Apple? How is it different from working at any other company?
Good question. Working for Apple is definitely interesting. I think a lot of people might think about working at a company like Apple is usually not true. I think it's surprisingly scrappy for a company with like 100 billion in the bank. I think people at Apple are extremely driven. Everyone I work with is like at the top of their field, which is very daunting because I mean I'm not top of my field, so it's cool to hang out with all these experts and really try to absorb knowledge from them, especially being on product design, where your goal is to kind of integrate all these amazing features into one product in the most cohesive and elegant way possible. In terms of other companies, I think the big thing about Apple that a lot of people in product design will attest to is that it's extremely focused on aesthetics. I'm sure anyone who's taken apart an Apple device knows that there's a lot of I don't know if it's basically it's a company thing where we try to make everything inside just as beautiful as the outside, which seems like a very lame answer, but I think other companies don't take aesthetics nearly as seriously as we do.
Definitely.
And definitely one of the bigger things is there's actually, even though it's a big company, I think there are people have a lot of responsibility. People like the amount of people who own a given thing in a product is relatively small, so it enables like the company to move quickly on a lot of different things and kind of just like have experts leading experts is kind of the whole shtick. So I don't know compared to other companies. This is the only company in that space that I've worked in, but I think that energy is pretty common in a lot of other Silicon Valley companies. But just the scale as well is also interesting. Is like you work on products that millions of people buy, so it's a different kind of pressure as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Richard. So next we have a general question. So we'll just go and I'll just call someone's name to answer. What kind of critical decisions do you have to make in your career? We can start with Derek.
Sure. So working in automation controls, I interface with a lot of production engineering and manufacturing engineering teams. That means that the code I push that runs on robots that human operators are near, that code needs to be extremely robust, well tested. All the edge cases have to be accounted for because if that robot throws a pallet at an operator, that person could lose their life. Like you can really see somebody be murdered in front of your eyes.
Wow.
So with every single update that you push, you have to not only think about safety, but also not only the safety of the cell or the robot you're working on, but how it interacts with everything else, how it interacts with veins, light curtains, pallet record. All these different things have to be accounted for so that your code is robust and not only is safe, but it doesn't affect our yield at the end of the day. It doesn't affect our cycle times. We're not slowing it down, especially at a company like Tesla, where every single, for example, drive unit that we create goes into someone's car. That car's already been ordered. So you have to take all these things into account with every decision that you make.
Thank you, Derek. Eric, do you want to answer the same question? What kind of critical decisions did you have to make in your career?
Yeah, my answer is actually shockingly similar, making sure that your code works when you send it out and never being like 100% sure that it's functioning, but making the engineering decision about whether it's good enough to go into production. Especially in my last role, I was writing trading algorithms, and whenever you push code into production in an environment like that, there's a little bit of fear. And I think if you're not a little bit fearful, you're probably a bit reckless. This is a piece of code that you write that's handling $100 million, $500 million a day, and if you forget a minus sign in there, that's a really big deal. So having the competence and confidence to be able to say, yeah, like we're good to push to prod is not an easy decision, but it's one that somebody needs to make.
Thank you, Eric. We have another general question. If you had to go back, would you choose the same field? We can go with Richard.
It's a good question. I don't really know, honestly. I think in my career, at least, I've kind of just been doing whatever has presented itself to me in a way. I'm not sure if I was to do it again, I would end up in consumer electronics. This kind of came out randomly. I didn't think I was going to be doing this when I started university. Not even until like a year ago, really. I think there's such a huge amount of chance and to an extent, like not luck, but being able to like come across opportunities and kind of picking and decide between them. That I could end up being like if I had gone back, I probably would have ended up doing something maybe entirely different. So I don't know if I would choose to do it again, but it happened this way, and I'm very satisfied with what's happened. So it's a roundabout answer.
Thank you, Richard. Stefan, do you also want to answer this question?
Yeah, I would love to add to this. Having taken the crooked path through education and entering the workforce, I think I would end up back in mechanical engineering. Construction always enticed me for the simple reason it was like no other industry. Just for the basic fact of what it takes to put in a 907 unit condo, or an animal hospital. Just and everything's different. Everything's crazy all the time, and that's something that always drew me towards construction. I think if I had to do things differently, I think I would have been more open. The biggest thing for me would have been having confidence in myself, knowing that I can do certain things that I maybe not underestimated myself. Just chose different paths because things made more sense. I didn't take risks at the time. That being said, high school for me was a very different experience. I didn't have a good time. I didn't enjoy it, and so that can limit your options when you make certain decisions as a teenager, that you don't fully understand the ramifications and repercussions of those decisions. Now, the thing of being in first and bringing everything back together brought me into an environment where it was okay to be different. It was okay to have a different set of skills, and there was a place for you on a team. I eventually came back into a leadership role just out of just the pure necessity of 1325 needing that at the time. 1325 was very close to folding. With tragic events and all sorts of other things that were happening at the time. So just being thrown in the deep end of the pool and everything that brought, that gave me a lot of confidence. And from that confidence, I was able to grow and find a path that brought me to where I am now. So would I do things differently? I think I wish I knew things that I know now about myself and that I didn't know then. And more importantly, knowing that even though other people look like they have it together, they're figuring things out just as you are. So not having all the answers is okay, and you're going to figure out eventually. Might be the hard way. If you're fortunate, it'll be the easy way. But at the end of the day, as long as you work hard and do your best, you will figure it out.
So, Stefan, what advice would you give to someone going through a similar experience you went through in high school or in university?
So sometimes your parents aren't wrong, and sometimes how things are said matters just as much as what. And it's easy to disregard something if you don't like how it's being said to you, even though it's not wrong. So again, figuring it out and figure out what's truth and what's maybe not completely true or conditionally true for certain times. Definitely matters. I think that was the question, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just do your best to figure it out. And again, if you do your best and you keep your head down and you work as hard as you can and be the best person you can be, then you will be successful. It doesn't matter how you get there.
Thank you, Stefan. Eric, I have a question for you. How does your engineering degree tie into what you do at work now?
Oh, it actually helps a lot. I kind of stumbled into the industry I work in without totally knowing it existed. I was lucky enough to get an internship at an awesome firm, which unfortunately no longer exists. But I would say it ties in maybe three ways. One is that an engineering education gives you an ability to just kind of solve problems, to define a research problem, define your constraints, your criteria, your design objectives, and work through the process of developing a solution, which is something that, to be sure, you learn probably in a lot of different academic fields, but I happen to learn it in engineering. A second is the ability to take a quantitative approach. Every so often, last week, I found myself solving partial differential equations. Last month, I actually solved an integral by hand, which people in university said I would never actually do in real life. So, it does come up. And then third, I think engineers tend to think about mechanically how things fit together and like to understand how things work and all those intricacies. And in the financial markets, as you really get into the meat and potatoes of how stocks actually trade, there are a lot of weird mechanics. We call it market microstructure. And I think having that engineering background and like a desire to understand how stuff works at the fundamental level is transferable to any field, including finance.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So now we have another general question. What is your least favorite part about your career? Derek, why don't you take this one?
The least favorite part of my career, I could say like waking up and having my name assigned to new Jira tickets, but that's not my least favorite part. I'd say, damn, that's a hard one.
For me, it's meeting minutes. I hate it. I'm really fast.
Derek, keep your NDA in mind, eh?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay, so I think my least favorite part is, I guess, having to interface. I like interfacing with a lot of different people. That's really fun. But when you get to the point where you're working with like 15 different points of contact for something that you should just be able to do yourself, it gets a little annoying. Since everybody's schedules are different, everybody prioritizes your project on a different level than you do yourself. So working with that many people on a single task just because of something like permissions, for example, if I don't have permission to push code to this certain line or access this human-machine interface, I have to go through multiple routes of communication. I don't like that part.
Okay, yeah, fair answer. Thank you, Derek. Another question for Derek. Derek, what's working at Tesla like?
So on a day-to-day, it's really fun because the teams I have worked with, so last year I worked with the Model 3 battery pack team. The company at the time was limited by battery packs, so we were getting a lot of orders in, and we were producing everything in General Assembly just fine, but General Assembly was being starved because of battery packs. So when you work at the bottleneck of a company like Tesla, the common vision and the common goal to just produce really well and produce high quality products is very apparent in everybody you talk to and every project you work with. So I really like that part. This year, a similar thing is happening, and I'm experiencing the same thing. I'm working on a team that is very driven to produce at a very high level, with quality in mind, obviously. So some people don't like the crunch, but I personally do prefer the crunch, and Tesla is always crunching stuff out. So I'd say that's my favorite part. That's what working at Tesla is like.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Our next question is for Richard. What's your best experience with Team 1325?
That's a good question. Weather-wise, I
Yeah.
mean, not for everyone else.
Yeah, it's directed to
Yeah,
you.
it's flashing, I guess. Hard to think of a single instance. I think, in general, I think our 2014 season, last season that I was really involved as a student, was really cool. I'm working a lot with Stefan, very closely actually on our robot. There was just a lot of stuff that went wrong, and it was kind of like, I don't know. It's weird. Like when you work on projects that are big and you're getting your ass kicked, there's a certain amount of camaraderie and like a certain amount of like respect to build for your team members that you just can't build and when a project is going smoothly. I think just a lot of experiences from that season, even though we didn't go to Worlds, are really cool. I think we built a pretty good robot during that season. And
Robot should have went to Worlds.
It was a good robot. Yeah, I think we were all very proud of the robot, even though we weren't really proud of the result. But I think overall that season was just really, really memorable. Just the whole season. Every season is memorable. They're all good. 2014 is definitely one of my favorites, though.
Always a good time, right?
Always, yeah.
Yeah. This is another general question. How does your career affect your general lifestyle? We can go with Eric.
Ooh, so like the immediate answer is that part of my job involves waking up pretty early. I normally try and be at work around 7. Normally, reality I'm a bit later, and then like I'm free by 4. And so I spend maybe like 2 hours just sitting around work waiting for my friends to finish work if they work on a different schedule. It's a really little thing, but it gets frustrating after a little while, and then you're always the first person to leave a party and go to sleep early because you have to be up there early the next day. But that's life.
You got to deal with it.
I think this is a good question, actually. This isn't a question a lot of high schoolers will ask. I think I didn't think about this when I was in high school, but it actually does have a lot of impacts. I think the most immediate one is obviously salary. Like if you want a lifestyle, you have to be able to afford that lifestyle. And another one is location. I think figuring out where you want to live, what kind of person you are you like a city person? Are you like a clever person? I think is important to figure out and will kind of drive the path you go down towards. Like Derek has to work in Reno. So if you're extremely anti-Reno like me, that's a deal breaker. But yeah, I think just generally like those small things do end up deciding like who you spend your time with, as well as like the kind of like things you're able to do. Living in Ontario, your hobbies are very different than living in like California, where you can go skiing. Like where you can like actually go skiing and like go surfing and stuff. So those are all things to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. So why doesn't everybody answer it? Why don't we go to Derek next?
Sure. So I think the largest effect that working at Tesla has had on my lifestyle is obviously I work in a very crunch time department. So the work hours get pretty bad. Sometimes it's like 70, 75 hours a week for like 2 months straight. So for example, ever since I started, my manager was like, hey, surprise, everything's on fire. Good luck, get to work. So ever since I just showed up, it's been like, work on this problem, solve it. Okay, here's another one. Work on this problem, solve it. Here's 15 more. And here's like 50 more in the pipeline. So I'd say that has the largest effect on my lifestyle currently.
Okay,
nice. Stefan, you want to take it?
Yeah. So for me, I knew I always wanted to come back home to the GTA. So, PCL, second biggest general constructor in Canada behind SNC Lavalin, but that's only because SNC Lavalin is literally all over the world doing nuclear plants and like hydroelectric and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a different market sector they serve. So having the ability to do building systems for PCL was a great opportunity for me in the sense that I knew I could work for as long as I want in the GTA. But another big thing for me coming out of my degree was finding something where I could find a decent work-life balance. So far I have that, and I know that can and will change with project progress. But for me, I start work at 8, I'm done 4 or 5. There's been, a a few times where I had to, work it till like 8, 9 o'clock just to get something done for the next day. You never have the time you think you have when you try to get something done. But it's construction's a great industry. Like most industries, it's susceptible to market fluctuations and stuff like that. But construction, especially ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional, is usually a year or two behind any recession. That's just due to the nature of how construction projects are financed. So they'll be completely financed, and you'll finish the project. Very rarely will a project get canceled or suspended in the middle of the project. So, certain things to think about. But there is a lot of security within construction, especially with building systems. Within PCL, it's a very interesting division. It's you have major projects, you have residential, you have all these other departments, but building system feeds all of them. We're not our own one. We don't have a building systems project. You'll have a building systems manager or coordinator on a project for whatever different business group is running that project. So, work-life balance is huge for me.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. What do we have here? Eric, we have a question for you. What is your greatest strength that plays a big role in your field?
Well, I think that comes back to the dealing with ambiguity, but thinking of it again, there's another one, and that's an ability to communicate complicated ideas simply. Because I was saying earlier that as engineers, we naturally want to get right into the weeds and understand the minutia of how systems work. But the reality is that executives and bankers and most decision makers don't really care about how you got to the answer, and really just want to know what they're supposed to do. And this is also not something I think that's really apparent in school, where you're supposed to show your work. When you get out into real life, and I'd like to hear if the others disagree or agree on this. You have to be sure that you've done your work and have your work ready to present, but be able to confidently present a straightforward solution based on all the engineering work you did in the background that maybe no one ever gets to see. And so being able to separate those two things in your mind is a pretty helpful skill.
Do any of the panelists disagree with what he said?
I agree with that holistically. The other thing that engineering teaches you, if you don't have an answer, that's fine, but go figure it out, right? At no point in time you need to overcompensate or just be the know-it-all at all costs, because that can cause more problems than you anticipate. But again, as Eric said, it's all the work that goes into it, and the confidence that brings towards a presentation. Like in construction, when a building inspector shows up, you better be on it, because if you're not, your building's not getting stamped, and you can't get occupancy, and you'll have liquidated damages that come with that. So you better be on it. But at the same time, if you don't know, go figure it out. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to keep answering questions, but due to our time constraint, I'm just going to wrap this panel up. So let me just quickly present my slideshow. Okay. So these are our social medias, which you can contact us in. We have a Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all go under at FRC3025. We also post updates, and future panels might be coming soon on our Instagram. Our website is team3025.com. You can find any additional resources and as well as a recorded version of this panel on our websites. Our registration is also now open. You can again find it on our website. A little side note, our age limit for the team is 13 to 18 years of age. So just to end it all, a huge thanks to all our panelists who've taken the time out of their busy days to join us in this panel. Another huge thanks to all the audience who decided to join us. And on behalf of Team 1325, we hope you guys learned a thing or two about choosing a major or a career path